welcome to another video. In today's video, they've been trying to take your democracy away from you for nearly 100 years. And this is how they've been doing it. It started off in the 30s when a group of industrialists, as they were called back then, approached Smedley Butler to pull a coup. Okay? So that one of those industrialists was Prescott Bush.
But let's start with the original story that took place, like 90 years ago?
Yeah, so it actually starts in 1933. A representative of a prominent Wall Street brokerage house named Gerald C. McGuire starts trying to recruit Smedley Butler it actually starts out as kind of an internal plot to get him to speak against Franklin D. Roosevelt taking the dollar off the gold standard.
Jonathan, didn't Butler also claim, in addition to these corporate leaders, that there were folks like Prescott Bush involved in this, the father of George Herbert Walker Bush and grandfather of George W. Bush?
So it's actually there's actually a kind of a game of broken telephone going on with his name being involved in this. So Prescott Bush was actually too much involved with the actual Nazi Party in Germany to be involved with the business plot. Bush was a partner at Brown Brothers Harriman, which is still a major investment bank based in New York, across the street from Zuccotti Park, their headquarters. And Brown Brothers Harriman was the subject of a different investigation by the same congressional committee, because that committee's ambit was to investigate all forms of sort of fascist influence and all attempts to, subvert American democracy.
Oh, this is editing Guda here. This is the great thing about constantly updating knowledge. You find out something new all the time. So my opinion on this is that the person that stuck these files in the same folder was basically sending a message to future researchers that all these people, the business plot and the Bush direct connection to Nazis, all were fascist plots to overturn the United States. So although the business plot specifically did not include Prescott Bush, he was independently working on ending our democracy through different channels. So it's basically doesn't change anything in my video as far as I'm concerned. Like, all the information is still valid. It's just a little bit not tied directly to the business plot, but that doesn't really matter. Fast forward, not very long, and his bank, the Union Bank, was taken away from him because he was financing Hitler directly. Okay, so Prescott Bush is George Bush Sr.'s dad, okay? So now, somehow, Prescott Bush was instrumental in getting to set up the CIA and how it functions, okay? Not sure how that all happened, considering he got his bank taken away from him at the start of the war, and then 5 or 6 years later he's instrumental in the creation of the CIA. How does that even happen? Now the CIA is created, and somehow his son is pretty much one of the main operatives in undercover operations, all right, and using oil companies as a cover, all right? This is all well documented, all right? So now, in 1963, Kennedy was trying to make peace in Vietnam and trying to make peace with Russia, okay? And they killed him for it, all right? Now, Prescott Bush puts out an ad, hires Nixon to be a politician that's in his pocket, okay? So now Nixon, you don't have to worry about, finding a job and doing work. You can focus on being a politician because me, Prescott Bush, is going to finance you. And this was before the assassination, because Nixon ran against Kennedy, okay? So Nixon then becomes president. And at that time, there was no way for the government to take our liberty. It just couldn't happen, right? There was no mechanisms in place at all. And because of the anti-war protests, Nixon felt terrified of his life, where he parked buses all around the White House. He was sure that they were going to come and drag him out and kill him, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, like killing for peace. Anyway, so he created the drug war.
Ehrlichman, now out of prison and out of politics, felt, I guess, that he had nothing to lose, so he was going to be honest about why they started the war on drugs. And if you remember, it was Nixon. The Nixon administration started what they called the war on drugs back in 1971. Turns out, it was not because they were concerned that drugs were really dangerous for Americans. It was for attacking their political enemies. Now, again, you might think, like, come on, this sounds conspiratorial. First of all, it's the guy who did the conspiracy who's admitting it. Second of all, he got arrested for and convicted on another conspiracy. It's not like he's shy about conspiracies. And Nixon, third of all, had an enemies list. These are all facts. So now here's Ehrlichman in his own words. He says, the Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. How do you see that and then not want to immediately end this nonsense political war on drugs?
When they looked at alcohol prohibition and 10 years, and it created these crazy violent gangs that this country really hadn't seen since the end of the Civil War, which was the prior big crime spree across America. Was the losers of the Civil War. A lot of them turned into criminals and just ran around the country doing whatever. And that was the biggest creation of cops, was right because of that, right? Okay. So now the drug laws were written initially in 1902 and 1903 and 1933. Those are the first three. And then you had, in between there, you had alcohol prohibition, which was like 1920, I think, or 29. I don't remember. Anyway, 1902 was for cocaine, 1903 was for heroin, and there's racist verbiage in both those, okay, outline these substances for racial reasons with racist intent, all right? Then in 33 was cannabis, again, now it's for Hispanics. First it was for blacks, then it was for Asians, now it's for Hispanics, okay? So these laws that were on the books that Nixon then twisted into the war on drugs were already written by racists with racist intent, all right? So now the war on drugs is, 100% invalid, a giant lie. But what it has actually done is it has created a mechanism where they can take your liberty really easily, okay? They didn't have that back there was cops, but they didn't have this massive police state that they built up for the drug war. That was really the purpose. They didn't care about drugs or anything like that. I mean, as a matter of fact, the CIA was flying drugs right into Clinton's state and when he was the governor, okay? So there is a direct connection between the Clintons and the CIA. So, and again, we've got the Bush family that set it all up. So anybody kind of thinking that the Clintons are some kind of equal to the Bush, no. They're merely working for them. They put them into that position, okay? And they're not the only ones they put into that position, okay? Because guess whose buddy was Nixon's buddy? Yeah, okay? So now we have Prescott Bush financing Hitler, starting the CIA, putting his son in charge. Then the Kennedy assassination, then Nixon connected to Prescott Bush, starts the drug war, and boom, okay? Now, I personally believe that Reagan his attempted assassination was the CIA as well, okay? Because look at who his vice president was, right? That guy. But he initially probably said, you need to do this, Reagan, and Reagan's like, I'm the president. And then pew, and then after that, Reagan did whatever they wanted him to, right? And part of what he did was ramp up the drug war, okay, i.e., militarize the police. And this is like, 10-ish years after it started. And it's like, look, 10-ish years after alcohol prohibition started, that was when they were realizing what a bad idea it was and that they should just not have it criminalized, right? No, that isn't the point. The point isn't the drugs. The point is this militarized police force that comes along with the illegality of substances. Because if the substances weren't illegal, then why do we have all these cops and all these prisons, right? They created all these criminals, and they created the whole scene that a lot of the drugs are now. Like, the reason why there's fentanyl overdoses is because of the drug war, okay? It's 100% by design, all right? So now we've got the Reagan, which is, connected right there too, right? And then we got 8 years of Reagan, 4 years of Bush, Clinton, tied to right nothing. It's all the same, right? The Clinton is the Bush, is the Reagan, is the Nixon. They're all from the Prescott Bush. Then we get the most corrupt election with the whole Florida thing and the hanging chads, and we end up with the loser as the winner, right? Now, if you remember, we had movies like Blow and Traffic, and we had the governor of New Mexico coming out and saying the drug war is BS, it's just costing us money, and these were real conversations going on in the late 90s and right up until 911. Yeah, 911. And then the following Super Bowl, right there in the commercials, was if you're smoking a joint, you're supporting terrorism. So they just reinvigorated the drug war, which that was what they were really terrified of, is if the public had been able to be aware, and these conversations would have continued to happen, and we would have legalized everything and approached drugs with a whole different view, okay? That's what was coming down. And if that would have come down, guess what? All those cops that are typically fascist leaning, and that's just because policing is fascist leaning. It's because it was created by people who had slaves and rich people who needed security guards, okay? Both those are, you don't have those issues on the left. Sure, the left has different issues, but we don't live in that reality, and no point in history has. So it evolved with these people doing these things. Now we have 911 reinvigorates the entire drug war. Okay, they double, triple, quadruple down on it. They write new laws and do this crime bill and all this stuff. And still, everything is even worse now across the country. People go, oh, look at Portland, look at Portland. It's just the same things going on over the entire world, basically. But Portland's decriminalized it, so it's out in the open. Big whoop, okay? So, the same people then, that's the Bush people, okay? And then the next person we get the Obama, okay? And the Obama, we could have many discussions about the Obama, whether he's actually connected, which having $100 million already in life, when you become the president, kind of says a little bit about your leanings, okay? And for the record, the rich people aren't necessarily the smart people. Let's take J.P. Morgan and Tesla example. Tesla, one of the smartest people in history. J.P. Morgan had all this money, not smart, okay, totally affected the way Tesla's ability to invent and create for our society was influenced by J.P. Morgan, okay? And when J.P. Morgan couldn't figure out how to monetize what Tesla was doing, he shut him down, okay? So the paradigm of the rich people, and were the people that sent all our factories to China, were they smart? So I think it's more that the people that are rich are like sociopaths. And we'll put this here, okay? So now we have the rich that come up with the police and how to do the police. And now, as my video, The History of Policing, that the largest theft is rich people stealing from poor people through wage theft. That trumps all the other thefts combined, okay? So now we have people that are most likely sociopaths, okay, because that's how they got their money, okay, that come up with these and we have racists writing laws to do so. I mean, the whole entire system, foundations are built on example. We didn't have an FBI before they criminalized alcohol. And then the crime that created, oh, now we need cops for this, right? We didn't have a need for a DEA until they made the laws making criminals out of all these people, okay? So this just all contributes to this giant juggernaut, and this giant juggernaut is what can take your liberty. That's it. Guys with guns and cages, right? And oh, it's all so official because they got the guy in the black robe and the little typer in the corner. And oh, it's all because it says on these words on this paper that it's this way. Yeah, okay. So now we progress. Remember Nixon's buddy, Stone? Who other buddies is buddies with Roger Stone?
In 1979, I was assigned to handle New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut for the Reagan campaign of 1980. Roy Cohn told me, I'm going to get you an appointment with Donald Trump. to talk about. Ronald Reagan's Campaign Finance Committee. Roy arranged not only for me to see Donald, but also to see his father, Fred Trump.
So now, the people who have been working on a way to take your democracy since the 1930s have got the best shot they've ever had. This has been in the works forever. These are democracy-hating people, and our democracy, as bad as it is better than the alternative. So at this point in our history of our country, we are being driven towards, and it's climate change, possibly the concept from the people who didn't do anything about it for decades. Now their big concept is, we just need to, kill off, millions of people and everything will be great. That's the solution because of the 30 years of inaction, all right? And actually, quite contrary of inaction, we've been just doubling down on everything we've been doing for 30 years. We've not slowed down at all. And the rest of the world wants to catch up. So this is a very, very bad situation for the entire planet. It is people that have been working to dissolve the United States democracy. If our democracy goes, the entire world is at stake. Who is going to stand up for democracy if the United States is a fascist dictatorship? It will be sad. And there's enough people that don't want to see that happen, that'll just tear the country apart. That's why they built the militarized police force that could take your freedom. That was the plan, okay? And Trump is a deeper deep state than the deepest deep state. He is the deepest deep state, literally. He is directly connected to the deepest deep state. Now, how powerful that group is at this point, their power within the government is waning, obviously, at the levels where they can protect Trump from his straight up criminal acts, right? But, this all blatantly could be just trying to drive the country into a civil war, okay? Because that is the ends to their means. Anything that makes massive civil unrest plays right into the hands of these people that have been trying to take our democracy for almost 100 years now. They'll take it any way they can get it. Can they drive this country to a civil war? Awesome. For them, that's their goal. Can they get a dictator wannabe in to destroy the Constitution? They'll do it. And at this point, they're getting desperate. Because with the advent of the internet and communication exploding around the planet, perpetuating lies becomes a lot harder. So, all right. So I hope you like this video. Please subscribe and peace.
Thank you for watching my video.